What's going on, world? How we doing today? All right, hey, I have the distinct pleasure and honor of bringing y'all my old XO, Captain Gallagher. All right, we are going to have one of our epic conversations today. Um, you don't want to miss this. All right, so I hope you got your note-taking devices out because Captain Gallagher always drops gems. Like I promise you, you will not meet anybody that has the point of view that he has. You've never met anybody that has the point of view he has, and you will never meet him again. So don't miss this opportunity. Here we go.
Man, I don't know. I don't know about that, Tom. That's pretty flat.
So, sir, what's going on? How you doing today?
I don't know. That was pretty flattering. I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that are also, from my unique point of view. For those who don't know, we work together. You were my first sergeant. I'm coming in. I wouldn't say as a young officer because non-commissioned officer before switching over to the dark side, and about almost roughly the same time in service. So I guess I do have a little bit of unique perspective. I always enjoy our conversations. I still miss them quite a bit. And now that I'm here in, TRADOC world, where you're getting ready to go to airborne world. So we've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm pretty excited. I like to keep our friendship, mentor, teacher circle that we have because I look to you for your mentorship, but I don't think that's exclusive. I think we learn from each other, and I think that's what makes our conversations flow, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Like I have gained a wealth of knowledge from you in the time that we work together and continually like moving forward. So go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and we're gonna dive right in. You know, we don't like to keep people in the lobby. We want to go ahead and get after it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I'm an NCO first, and that's really shaped my perspective. And then switching over to the officer side, you make the jokes all the time being enlisted. You're like, well, those brain dead officers, and make all these dumb decisions. We just have to follow them out. And now that I'm on the other side, I kind of see, man, those decisions weren't always completely dumb. And I'm just such a broader experience that I wish more people had the exposure to. And I think as you get at the senior levels, you start seeing it and understanding it. But it's something definitely that the junior leaders need exposure to fully understand. And I'm not trying to sound, arrogant or, smug about that because it's just the reality sometimes. But there's a few things that I thought we want to talk about. I already mentioned them a little bit. So the first thing I want to talk about is the leadership power drift. So I just mentioned that I'm in TRADOC right now, and that's one of the big talking points here at trainee land is being a cadre member or an officer in charge, or drill sergeant, or even a senior non-commissioned officer. Where do you start seeing that leadership ability that you have flow into abuse and those guys that are just leading with their rank? And I thought that's something we could bring up a little bit because they really want to emphasize that to us in trainee world because, we're dealing with these new recruits that are coming in. So we're the first exposure to Army leaders. And the Army wants to show that, hey, these cadre members, these drill sergeants, that they're what the Army expects of leaders. So they want you to really empathize with the new recruit, the new soldier, even the new leaders, because we have these NCOESs here, and we have the Bullock lieutenants coming in, all three different branches here. So I guess my question for you then, First Sergeant, is how often have you seen people just leading the way with their rank first and foremost, and then making their decisions based on that? And the first thing that comes to my mind is like that new E5 or that new butter bar. Like, hey, I've been getting it for so long. This is my turn. I'm going to be the one in charge, and people are going to listen to me. And as leaders, we kind of brush it off like, no, that's not me. That's just toxic leadership, and they just chalk it up like that. But what are we doing about it?
So you just hit one of my favorite topics. How's the audio? Is it still pretty choppy?
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. I can hear
But
you.
you just hit one of my favorite topics. Like, I did a series on John C. Maxwell's 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership. And in that book, he talks about the 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership. And then there's another book called Leading When Not in Charge. And they put a big emphasis on leading with appointed authority versus leading with influence. And they had this whole concept of where they called it the hall pass. So remember when we were in school, you had a hall pass. And when you got that hall pass, you would be able to go to the bathroom. So let's pretend that the hall pass is appointed authority. And let's pretend leading with influence is when you're inside of the classroom. Because if you got that hall pass and you go into the hall, nobody harasses you. They're just like, they say something, you hold the hall pass up, you go to the bathroom, no questions asked. You got the hall pass. So that's that appointed authority. But the problem with leading with the hall pass, and we're talking about leaders that lead with their appointed authority or with their rank and not influence, they don't learn how to lead with influence. So when they get into situations and they tell people, you're going to do what I say just because of my rank, that's going to work for a while, but they call that the gun of authority. If you take a gun and you keep waving around, you don't never do nothing with it, people tend to do what? It loses its power.
Yeah, or misfire.
Or there you go, or it misfires, and we end up shooting hostages and stuff. But with that hall pass scenario, when you're in the hall using that appointed authority, using that hall pass, what's not happening? You're not in class, so you're not learning. So if you're not learning, you're not learning how to lead with influence. And there's a lot of that going on. Like, another thing they said was that it's kind of like children in grade school. They sit there in line and they wait until it's their turn to be the line leader. And when they're just waiting in line, they're not learning anything. They're just like, I'm just waiting for my turn, waiting for my turn, waiting for my turn. The whole time that they've been waiting for the turn, they could have been learning what to do and what not to do, but they're so focused on becoming a line leader that they never focus on what they could learn while they're waiting. And a lot of leaders do that. Like you said, they're like, oh, it's my turn. I've been here for so long. We're going to do it my way, this, that, and the third. They weren't good followers.
So my question is then, how do we take those leaders? Because we identify them. It doesn't automatically mean that they can't grow into be something better. But it's like you said, you have to switch from being authority led and then to influence. So I guess my approach would then to be, I'm going to be dealing with lieutenants, is just try and say, okay, hey, dude, now that you have a little bit of authority, I think the best way to start with the influence is because you don't have any experience, you don't have hardly any credentials, other than like the baseline, hey, I'm a junior officer, right? So the best way I think to approach it is through empathy. And if you can place yourself in your subordinate's shoes and kind of see where they're coming from and see that switched perspective, that'll at least give you a little bit of baseline, right? Because I could be vice versa and try and teach these lieutenants a lesson and be like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to lead by my authority. You're going to do what I say because I'm a captain, and somebody treated me this way when I was a lieutenant. And, the power struggle keeps going up and up to field grades and then, everything else. But the first step I really believe is to really empathize with your subordinates, and especially if you don't have any experience at all. You don't need anything. You just have to begin to understand, the people that you're leading. And once you can do that, you start that.
All right, let's switch cameras real quick. Okay, how's the audio now? All right. Well, I tried, but no, I totally agree with you. I think the first thing is we have to start by explaining to them what what empathy is, because a lot of times in life people they don't understand what empathy is, and they try to do what they've seen in the past, and explaining what influence is, like the way John C. Maxwell explains influence is, he says influence is your ability to add value to someone else's life. So what is it that you can do? Like, how can you add value to someone else's life to get them to be able to utilize that influence? But before you can utilize influence, you have to get buy-in.
Yeah. It's all about making yourself more reputable with, the person that you're trying to mentor and develop.
Yep. I totally agree. I'm gonna try to switch cameras one more time, and we're gonna call it good. Whatever this does, if this thing's cracking pretty bad, I'm like, man.
And then the other too is being irresponsible with the authority that you do have sometimes, and people immediately like, oh, that dude's a toxic leader. He leads with his rank, only with his authority. But maybe that's not always intentional at times. And I don't want to get caught up on like the definition of, good leadership. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about like inadvertently saying, I'm in a position higher than you. I have to make this decision. And it's because, I outrank you. This is why we need to do something. And that's just bottom line what the Army is sometimes. And how that can be perceived as irresponsible. So you have to take that leader, if you're the person that you're trying to mentor, because we're still talking about junior leaders here, and kind of say, okay, we understand why you made that decision, but we need to look at it from a different perspective, because how you're doing it is the right thing, and it is what I'm asking you to do. However, I think there's just a more tactful, I think that's probably the better word for it, a tactful way to do it.
Yeah. Here's another thing. So we talked about buy-in. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? All right, give me 1 second.
Nope. So first I was having some signal trouble now. While he fixes that, I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time talking about that. It's just something me and First Sergeant have talked about.
Is that any better?
And yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So a minute ago we were talking about buy-in. I think you have to. So once again, I'm going back to the old John C. Maxwell, because he lays this stuff out really good. What he says is this: is like, at first you have to get buy-in. Like a leader. Let's talk about an organization. So he said there's 4 things that an organization has to have. An organization has to have the people. The purpose of the people determines the potential of the organization. Then we talk about the morale in the organization. The morale in the organization is determined by the relationships in the organizations, how people treat each other and how they interact with each other. The next thing is the vision. The vision determines the direction that the organization moves in. And then the last thing is the leader. The leader determines the level of success that the organization will be able to achieve. So if we take those 4 things right there, and then we roll over and we start talking about buy-in. Now, we just talked about the organization. Now let's talk about the leader that's going to determine the level of success of the organization. And we do decentralized leadership in the Army. So we have leaders at every level. So let's talk about the leader. Now, a leader has to have a vision, period. A leader has to have a vision. All right. You cannot lead if you do not have a vision. You have to have a vision. Whether that is you're borrowing somebody else's vision and you're buying into it, or you have your own vision and you're trying to move in that direction. So a leader has to have a vision. So what a leader has to do is, first, the leader has to have a vision. And once the leader has the vision, the next thing the leader has to do is the leader has to get people to buy into said vision. So once the leader gets the people to buy into the vision, buy into them, then they get the people to buy into the vision. They have to buy into the person before they buy into the vision. And I believe this is where this is where Cody will be back in a second. But this is where we have that issue with people trying to lead with appointed authority versus trying to lead with influence, because they want people to buy into that vision that they have instead of buying into them. It's way harder to get somebody to buy into you, because in order to get somebody to buy into you, you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk the walk too. So I can't be coming in here and coming late to my organization and doing all this stuff and being late all the time and telling my people they need to be here on time. I can't tell my people that, hey, look, you need to be in accordance with 600-9, and I'm walking around here and I can't even button my dang on belt. It don't work like that. Like, in order to get people to buy into you, you got to prove to them that I'm drinking the same Kool-Aid that I'm selling to y'all. If you can't prove that and you can't demonstrate that I am doing the same things that I am asking y'all to do, then it's no good. All right. So we have to get the subordinate to buy into you before they will buy into the vision. Now, once we get them to buy into you, then we can get them to buy into the vision. Now, he broke it down, and we talking about John C. Maxwell here. He broke it down like this. He said, look, there's 4 scenarios, okay? You'll have somebody that will buy into the leader, but won't buy into the vision. When you have somebody that buys into the leader, but doesn't buy into the vision, guess what happened? They will continue to follow the leader. Now, once they buy, they'll continue to follow the leader, but they'll try to get the leader to change their mind. All right, now that's on the leader. That's fine. We can work with that person, right? And you can get somewhat level of success. Then you'll have somebody that will buy into the vision, but won't buy into the leader. In that scenario, guess what happens? The person no longer will follow the leader. They're going to find another leader that has the same vision that they bought into, and they'll go from there. All right, let me send Captain Gallagher the link again. One second. Sorry about that. All right, we're gonna get this thing going here. I'm gonna talk trash to him when he come back on too, because all the crackling left as soon as he left. But either way, so now we're talking about scenario. We talked about scenario 2. Scenario 2 was they would buy into the vision, but they wouldn't buy into the leader. So you're not going to have success there, because that person isn't going to do what the leader asks them to do. They're going to try to do everything else, and they're going to try to be, to get the leader to be messed up. Then you have scenario number 3, where the person buys into the leader and they buy into the vision. When they buy into the leader and the vision, that person will follow you to the ends of the earth. Okay, that's what they will do. All right. Now, there's a 4th scenario. The person will not buy into the leader or the vision. When they don't buy into the leader or the vision, there will be no success had whatsoever, because they're not gonna follow them. This is why buy-in is so important, and you have to get your people, whether it be your subordinates, your employees, whosoever, you have to get them to buy into you as a person. Think about it. When people talk about businesses, what do they say? They normally say people do business with people they know and they like. Now, I got it. We have this whole thing in the Army about people, when the word like. We have this whole thing in the Army where everybody's talking about like leadership versus likership. And I think what happens a lot of times is when we have that leadership versus likership conversation, people twist it. Now, I'm not saying that you should go into work with the attitude of, hey, look, I'm trying to be best friends with my subordinates. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you go in with a good attitude. You go in, you do your job. You go in, you take care of people. And through you taking care of people and doing the right thing, they will grow to like you. I'm not saying going in here, you letting everybody off early. You're doing all of these things that are not good for the organization. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you take care of people, through taking care of people and treating people with dignity and respect, that's how you get buy-in. That's where the buy-in comes in. So this is what I'm saying. This is where I'm going with the leadership versus likership. Now, a lot of people will say your soldiers should not like you. You shouldn't be friends with your soldiers. Okay, let's look at that. Let's look at that. Now, I got it. I'm tracking all of that, but hear me out. This is what I'm saying. If a leader takes care of you, they make sure that you're trained. They make sure that you're taken care of. Like you have a family emergency or something, they make sure you get to it if time permits. They do all of these things. Like they try to move heaven and earth to make sure that you are taken care of. And they have good morals. They have good character. They don't stab you in the back. They don't change how they act when certain leaders and stuff come around. They're consistent. They're absolutely 100% consistent. Are you going to say that you don't like that person? Now, this is what happens. What happens is this. You get leaders who will go out, and when the boss comes around, they completely change how they act. I can't tell you how many leaders I've had that say, I change when my boss changed. That is the wrong attitude to have. You should lead how you lead, regardless of who your boss is. You may change how you communicate with that person, but to say that you fundamentally change who you are as a person because of the person that's in charge of you, that is a character flaw. And that's Richard Green's opinion right there. Like it, love it, leave it, don't really care. I'm just telling you that's where I'm coming from. That is why we have a lot of issues with buy-in, because of consistency and people trying to get people to buy into a vision before they get people to buy into you. Because think about it like this. The greatest product that you have is yourself. You are the weapon. You are the greatest product that has ever existed. So why would you try to get somebody to buy into a vision before they buy into you? Think about it. That makes absolutely no sense. That makes no sense. And we are back. So this is what you missed, all right? We talked about buy-in, right? And I just want to say for the record, that crackling was on you. It wasn't on me because it's gone now.
Yeah, so I had my phone into the the touch whatever charger, and it was heating, and it immediately turned off. I was like, oh shit. It's not one thing, it's the other, so I ran up and grabbed the wife's MacBook.
Okay, so what we talked about buy-in, right? And we talked about the 4 scenarios of people buying into what happens when someone buys into the leader versus the vision. You'll have some success, but they'll try to change your mind. Then you have scenario number 2 where the person will buy into the vision and not the leader. You won't have success because those people are going to try to undermine you, and they're going to go somewhere else to find a leader that supports the vision that they bought into. Then you have scenario number 3 where the person buys into the leader and the vision, where you'll have great success. Then you have scenario number 4 where the person does not buy into the vision or the leader, and there is zero success to be had there. So the thing that I was just talking about was the importance of leaders understanding why you should get buy-in. Like this is the scenario that I use as a leader, and we're going to specifically talk about our profession. When you show up with certain rank on your chest, there's a certain level of respect and buy-in that you're going to get just based upon what you have on your chest. Now, from that point, 1 or 2 things is going to happen. That level of respect can go up because that person can say, hey, you know what? This is what this person looks like. This is what I thought about them, and it was all true. Or you can start doing things by imposing and having people do things that you're not willing to do yourself, and that goes down.
Yep.
So there is where the buy-in issue comes in at. Like the people that try to just lead based upon like, this is my rank and you're going to do what I say because I hold this rank. Those are the individuals who want you to buy into the vision and not yet buy into them. But like I said, that is a character flaw. When you want people to buy into a vision before they buy into you, because we're in a people business. Are we not?
We are.
So why would you not want the people to buy into the people?
That's good. So I'm glad now that we fixed our technical difficulties. I think we've hit that.
Yeah.
I really wanted to just talk a little bit because I know power grip is something that we kind of brush over, but we don't really like go in depth about how we're gonna fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about, and you said it's probably gonna rub some people the wrong way, but I want to emphasize that I am coming from a place of I guess there's no good way to come about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and say my next theme is going to be, out with the old and in with the young army. So with that being said, I'm not dismissing all the years of experience that certain leaders have, but it comes with a more responsibility to your position and rank that you have, because you have so much more influence over the junior leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to recognize at the same time that your experience and your unwillingness to adapt at a certain point is detrimental to the leadership that you're trying to foster and to the Army as a whole. So we talk about this a lot, and I think I'm going to make some broad statements here. It doesn't apply to everybody, obviously, but where I have seen it in my experience, more so than not, is the warrant officer corps. And it's not everybody, it's just my particular experience. So warrant officers are very unique as they are more specialized NCO, right? They're not quite an officer, but maybe they still have this inkling to still be an NCO. And usually they're, 20 plus years in the Army. They've already been a senior NCO, and now they're trying to elongate their career betterment for themselves and their profession. And I totally get that, and I'm totally on board. Where I do see an issue, though, is, and this is not just warrant officers, it's all seniors, whether it's field grade or senior commissioned officers, where they say, this is the way we've done it, this is the way I've done it, and it's been effective. And this has shaped the experiences and the leadership that I have been doing for the past 10 to 15 years. I've been good at it.
All right. We had a little freeze. He'll be back in a second. But I understand where he's coming from. Like what he's bringing is he's trying to paint a picture for you here, and what he's trying to paint a picture of is teamwork. What me and Captain Gallagher talked about before we got on live was is that a lot of times you will hear our leaders tell our officer counterparts to listen to your NCO, but that goes both ways. Like, oh, there he is. He's back.
It's the internet now. Okay.
Hey, they ain't gonna stop us. This message coming out.
Where did I cut off at?
About you were talking about the warrant officers and the difference there.
So I also see that in senior non-commissioned officers and field grades as well. They want to lead in these positions of responsibility, and they've been effective at it. So everybody looks at them in their unit and be like, well, this guy's a CW3, or this guy's sergeant first class, first sergeant, sergeant major, or man, he make major or lieutenant colonel. He must be effective at what he does. That's not always the case. It certainly helps their buy-in with the other leaders, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to say is it only gets them so far. And if you don't accept that you have to adapt, I don't know what you're going to be echoing. Let me fix this. Okay.
Man, I have never had this many technical difficulties. Can you hear me, sir? All right. Give me 1 second.
So what I was going to say is, because of these senior leaders, you have to always continue to adapt. And you have to continue to be flexible. And just because you attain a certain rank or position doesn't make you an automatic expert on being that type of leader, right? Just because you've made a certain point in the Army and look at all the positions that you've held, I get it. You've had a successful career path, but you are not there, right? You've not arrived. You're always still arriving. You're always still adapting. And the Army is a continual breathing organism that if you don't continue to grow and adapt, the young are just going to eat the old. And I guess that's my highlight here is I have more of an issue with senior leaders getting just kind of getting stale and just accepting the fact I've had a good career. I know what I'm talking about. I've reached this position. Look at all these positions I've had. Why aren't you listening to me? Because I clearly have the most influence in the room. And I don't think that's effective, and I don't think that's good for junior officers or junior leaders to see at all. What you should be doing is fostering like a climate of asking questions and explaining and developing, right? So I mentioned like I was an NCO. I don't claim to ever be like, you know what, I'm an expert on being a non-commissioned officer just because I, held a certain position. And just now that I'm a captain doesn't mean I know everything there is to know about being a captain and you should listen to me because look at these positions I've had. I'm not going to tell that to my lieutenants that I'm teaching. I want to tell them, hey, I'm still growing with the Army. I've been in for 14 years. The Army has changed so much in my 14 years. And if I don't continue to grow and change, the Army doesn't have a use for me. And that's what I really would like to see more of from senior leaders. And then for them to come out and just say, hey, I'm not done growing. I'm still learning and willing to learn and change. And just because I've had a certain position or a rank doesn't make me the end all be all. I still want to be mentored. Even when I'm a lieutenant colonel, if I am so fortunate enough to get there, just like anybody else that would be a sergeant first class, I'm not gonna be like, well, I've made it. I'm done with my career. I don't want to be first sergeant. I don't want to be sergeant major. No, come on, man. You should always want to aspire to be more. And you should never be stagnant at that point either and be like, I'm good. You know what? Regimental sergeant major, that's all. That's good for me. No, I don't believe anybody says that, right? I think your end goal is like, hey, I want to continue to get better. And I would love for senior leaders to come out and say that.
I think there's two things that I'll bring up. So I heard about three things. The first thing I heard was an infinite mindset versus a finite mindset. And then the other thing I heard was you talking about being stagnant. I think it's interesting that you bring that point up because when we look at infinite versus finite, the attitude that you're referring to is a finite mindset as to, like you said, finite is there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's done. And that's not good for our organization because as long as we have a finite mindset, we're just looking at it as, once my shift is over with, I don't really care what happens. But with an infinite mindset, it's like you said, we're continuing to get better because things are growing. And it's not about what I'm doing now. It's about the people that's going to come behind me and what I'm going to be able to lead to them, that legacy piece.
Yeah, that's perfect because that's one thing that I've heard more so now that I've been here is, the new BCT. Everybody always talks about this. It's a fabled thing once you get in force comm that everything in BCT is so much easier than what you'd had it, right? And all the NCOESs before you, they were harder. Everything that you do was more difficult before you actually did it. And it's too soft. The Army is getting too soft and it's not for me. And how do you represent yourself in a positive light with the Army and then going forward and be like, well, it was so much harder. Now there's no challenge left for me in the Army? No. And it doesn't work like that. So I recently told you I had a run-in here on base, and my wife couldn't believe I said this. She's staring at me right now, but I talked to some senior captain and senior warrant, and they were complaining, oh man, I don't know about this new generation of leaders that are coming in. They're making training so soft here, trade off. There's so many different more rules. We let soldiers get away with stuff so much more. And I'm just thinking to myself, you guys are dinosaurs. So I went up to him. I said, you know what? I'm going to stop you right now. Because they said, hey, sir, we really feel for you. Good luck with command. Especially trying to be here at trade-off. I know it's going to be a challenge for you. I said, no, I'm good. I'll be fine because I'm adaptive. But
yes.
You know what? I think it's time for you guys to get out.
Yes.
Straight up. I went up to him and said, hey, it's time for you to get out. They're like, well, I'm trying to. They just won't let me retire. I was like, I don't need to hear any excuses. I said, once you reach that point in your career, it's time for you to go. No hard feelings for you. I thank you for your service and all the positive experiences that you've had in the Army. You've clearly shaped other leaders and had a successful career. I am not discrediting that at all. But what I am saying is maybe we all get there. Maybe I will too. Maybe you get to brag and you're like, you know what? I'm done. Maybe after command, I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. We all get burnt out. I get that. But as senior leaders, we can never, ever admit that to ourselves or others around us, right?
if we have that inkling in our brain, we're like, you know what? It is. It's time. Time for me to go. You don't have to say anything. You just drop the packet. Peace out. Because even after you're out, I believe you still have an impact on the people around you. Nobody wants to hear about, retired Sergeant Major Green over there. He doesn't have anything good to say about the Army. He just served 20 years. No, that ain't me. That shouldn't be you either, right? It shouldn't be any leader in the Army. We should always want to say, I had a positive experience. The Army is always changing. It's always going to adapt. And these kids that are coming in, and I say kids, right? Whether they're trainees or new officers or junior NCOs going to NCOESs, right? They didn't choose when they came in the Army. They didn't choose when they were born, right? It's just the product of their environment when they came in that they just happen to have an iPhone, iPad. Gaming was huge. It's no fault on them. Are we going to say, oh, man, you guys are soft because you were born in 2002? These kids don't even remember 9/11 or anything significant in history like millennials, like the new Gen Zs coming in. They don't have the same experiences as us, and that's fine. We didn't have the same experiences as our fathers and the generations before us. That didn't make us a less effective Army. The good leaders didn't recognize our experiences and shaped us to become better. And that's what we need to preach as we continue to progress in our rank and our positions of responsibility.
Ooh. So, hey, I don't usually do this, but I'm about to name drop. So, okay. One of the best leaders that I've had the privilege of serving with was Colonel Kendall Robinson. He was my company commander at Fort Bragg. He was an MP, and I reach out to him because he has a very unique way of looking at things. He always sees things outside the box.
Is this the soft-spoken Sergeant Rob?
Said yes. Yeah, he was prior enlisted. He was a sergeant first class and he switched over. Okay. And I had a conversation with him recently about maybe 6 or 7 months ago. And one of the things he told me was, he said, it's very easy for a leader to discredit what, their subordinates are doing, because when the majority of leaders, and I'm not saying all this is, but the majority of leaders, what they remember is when they were proficient at a job. That's what they remember. They don't remember when they weren't proficient. So they look at, that's the memory that they have in their head. That's why, when you do something for so long and then you graduate to another level and then you come back and try to do it, you're like, man, this is harder than what I remember it was, because you remember when you were proficient. You had all those reps. So it seemed like it was easier. So I think that has a lot to do with, like you said, we can't sit here. This is about building a team. This is about building a team that's going to defend America. That's what this is about. It's not about sitting here saying that this person is weak, that person is weak. I had the opportunity to speak with Sergeant Major Chandler in 2000, I think it was 2010 at Fort Bragg. And what he said was this. He said he came in the Army in 1985. And when he came in the Army in 1985, drill sergeants were saying the same thing that they were saying now. You're too weak. You're this, you're that. We're going to be speaking another language. America's not going to make it. Now, look at that mindset. That was from 1985 until, 2010. And then I had the opportunity to speak with Sergeant Major Griffin. He just retired. Sergeant Major retired Griffin. He said the same exact thing. Drill sergeants were saying the same thing. Those Vietnam vets, they were saying the same thing. So I think it's a mindset issue. We need leaders to be able to identify talent and cultivate it. When you get to the point where you're saying hey, these guys are weak, this, that, and the third, that stuff does not matter. What matters is, as a leader, do you have what it takes to identify and cultivate talent so that we can use said talent to win the wars that we need to fight? That's what it's about. Can you be adaptive?
Spot on. And this kind of goes, I didn't want to get into this one too much, but it kind of goes into what we learned about tradition versus hazing. So this is kind of what kind of sparked our conversation when I was in school was the Army new generation soft. And, we did all these things, and I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't classify that as hazing. I thought that was just good-natured, esprit de corps, building of a team, right? And now everything that I thought was esprit de corps is now classified as hazing. And it can be perceived for the newer generation coming in, like, hey, that's not the team I want to be on, you know? And a good example of it is, since I know that you're airborne, the blood wings, right? How many times has a soldier been like, I want those? It's a rite of passage. I want my NCO or whoever to just stamp those into me, and like, it's part of being an airborne unit. But then how many of those kids at the same time are like, well, I'm just going, I don't really want Sergeant Green to hit me like that, but everybody else is kind of doing it anyway. So you can't just completely ignore that other kid who doesn't want to do it. You can't say, oh, well, you're not airborne because you didn't do that. And that's just one example. The other examples I thought of, when I got stripes, how many of us were rolling in the mud and getting water thrown on us while we were doing push-ups, while the other NCOs are like, clapping, they're proud of us. So when you get promoted, you get punched in the chest, you say, all right, you earned that rank, or you did, all those different things that we now consider, that's hazing. You don't want to put embarrassment or demean anybody. And yes, they might have an end to it, according to the Army's definition, right? It's a rite of passage and has a defined end. How often does it not, and it just transitions into bullying or like continual peer pressure, right? Like that airborne unit. Well, I didn't want my blood wings, but I'm here anyway. I got them, and that leads to, well, I really didn't want to, berate and smoke those soldiers, but my sergeant said I was supposed to, so I did, and now I'm on the same pathway as that NCO. You see where I'm going with all that?
Yeah. And this is what I would say, because like I'm gonna go back to the blood wing piece. Yeah. Everybody's not gonna deal with that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's not gonna deal with it, and I'm glad that we're in an organization that was that's very proactive and catches stuff like this, and we terminate it, because I'm telling you, like I wouldn't have it. Like PFC, 18-year-old PFC Green was rough around the edges.
Yeah,
real rough. Like I came in the Army 215 pounds, bench pressing 375. So I wasn't having it. Yeah, people was doing it, but I wasn't doing it. Nobody was punching me in the chest. Like I had issues that the Army helped me work through. And those things, like a big thing with me as a private, was respect. Nobody was going to disrespect me. I respected my leaders. I did what they told me to. I was always taught growing up as a child that, when you're working, if your boss has to stand over your shoulder, then they don't need you. So I always made it a point to do the best job that I could do, so that nobody had to come behind me and check me or look over my shoulder. And it was the same thing with respect. Like I wasn't going to put my hands on anybody else, and nobody else was going to put their hands on me. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and tell the story, right? So okay. One of my old soldiers, Johnson Delano, I think me and you talked about old Johnson Delano, right? So when I was in E5, Johnson Delano, he had came to Fort Bragg, and he don't mind me telling the story. This is my brother. He's out doing big things. He's a stockbroker now. This guy does all kinds of great stuff. But Johnson arrived while we deployed down to Afghanistan, and this was my first deployment. And we get back, and we have this group of paratroopers that's been back there, and they're privates and specialists and things like that. And they've got all these jumps. Like these jokers are 20, 30 jumps in, because the division is deployed, but we're still jumping. So we get back, and at this time, I didn't have a good handle on leadership. Like I was doing some things that I shouldn't have been doing, as far as like how I talk to people and stuff like that. So we get back, and I meet Johnson and his crew for the first time. And I tell everybody to get there, what's in formation. And I'm saying it in a joking way. So everybody got into formation except Johnson. Johnson looked me right in the face, and he was like, "Hey, Sergeant, I don't know who the blank you think you're talking to, but you ain't talking to me." And immediately, like, I'm like, okay, there's something different about this guy right here. Yeah. I'm like, look, man, I'm just joking around. Just get in formation. All right, boom. So he gets in formation, and the next day, Johnson comes and finds me, and he tells me, he's like, "Look, Sergeant, I'm a good dude. Like, I have anger issues. I apologize about yesterday. I shouldn't have came at you like that. I just don't like people talking to me like that." And I learned a big lesson from that interaction with him. And that goes back to what you said, like that whole, this is the way that we've always done things, and all of that hazing and stuff. That stuff ain't going to fly with everybody. is not going to fly with everybody. It's going to cause problems. It doesn't build a cohesive team. It divides it.
Right. I'm all about building a security core, but there's such a big difference of like me pinning on stripes and then commissioning. And I'm biased here. Obviously, I'm still an officer in the United States, so I hold myself to that standard of, when I got pinned, I got saluted, shook my hand, thank you. It was very, very professional. Not as exciting as rolling around in the mud or getting punched in the chest like I used to. But why isn't that a standard that we can all strive to do? Why can't we make everybody as professional? Why is that not the standard? Because it's the way we've always done it, right?
And I believe
I've had it hard, so somebody else is going to have it hard.
I believe that professionalism is the standard. I think where the question comes in at is like what some individuals consider to be professional because of that whole thing. Like, this is the way that we've always done it. Like, if you go to an organization that has very low standards and the discipline is very low, and I gotta call on old Sergeant Major Arredondo. If you go to an organization where discipline is extremely low, and the level of professionalism is extremely low, and you go in that organization and you change out the NCOs, you change out the leaders, you change out the officers, like you change out that leadership, and you put leaders in there that has a very high level of discipline, where they believe in having a well-disciplined unit. They believe in having very high standards of professionalism. Like, this is what the regulation says, and this is what we're going to do. I'm not saying doing anything that's off the wall and not using common sense, but they have a very high level of discipline and a very high level of professionalism. Those soldiers in that unit, they're going to feel some type of way about it because that's all that they know, especially the new soldiers. They're going to feel like this is the norm. This is what we know. So when that new leadership comes in, now you got friction. You got all this friction because, like they said, this is the thing about it. You can't shine a diamond without friction. You got to have friction to shine a diamond. You can't shine a diamond without having friction. You have to have that friction. So when you switch all those leaders and stuff out, there's going to be change. So a lot of times we have organizations where people are different. People experience different things, and they voice themselves differently. So in those situations, like, it just takes that leader coming in there saying, "Hey, look, the buck stops here. This is what it is." Sir, are you still there? All right, so he'll be back with us in a second. The next thing he wanted to talk about was how do we avoid echo chambers in leadership? And that's going to be a good one because me and Captain Gallagher, we talked about this one as well, because a lot of times you hear people come on and they'll say things like, "Oh, look, lead from the front." And Sergeant Major Griffin sent me a fantastic video yesterday. If I was on my computer, I would put it on so everybody could see it. But he put a video up, and then Latoya Green, Sergeant First Class Latoya Green, she put up a video as well as talking about, like, you can lead from all different sides. You can't just lead. You don't just have to lead from the front. And right. What it was a video of a father who had a horse, right? They had horses, and he had his son. He was like, you always hear people say lead from the front. He's like, but check this out. If I'm leading my son from the front, I'm blocking his view. He can't see what's in front of him. He was like, but check this out. He said, if I stand behind my son, I can see everything that he can see, and I can guide him. But in the front, I can't do that. I can only see what's in front of me and yell back to him. But if he's standing in front of me, I can see what I can see everything he sees. I can guide him. I can point him in the right direction. I can give him advice.
I can see that.
Now, Latoya hit on that same thing. What she said was, a leader can lead from the left, a leader can lead from the right, a leader can lead from the back. There's all different positions that a leader can lead from. And I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Captain Gallagher. So Sergeant Major Griffin also told me this. He said he had a leader, and the leader told him that, sometimes, like when you get to higher levels, like, being a first sergeant, coming to command, all of this stuff, you can't be. Imagine you were at a dance floor, right? And you're looking for somebody. Would you be able to find them better if you were in the crowd or if you were standing up on the balcony looking down at the crowd?
Yeah,
That's the job of a leader. A leader has to have that view downward onto the balcony. I'm not saying that you can't get in the trenches and do things with your subordinates time as time allows, but what I'm saying is this: is that a leader has to be able to position themselves in a position that's going to best benefit the organization that they're leading. Sir, go ahead, take it away.
Man, I like that. I'd not heard that before. That's a good analogy, I guess, with the leading the sun from behind rather than the front. And I think that just shows like the dynamic of what kind of leader you are, right? And more so what position you're in. Like I look at that more as a mentor and coach relationship. If you're kind of guiding and leading them from behind, you're still leading them, but you're giving them a purpose and direction more so than just saying, hey, we're trying to accomplish a certain task. I need you to do as I do. And there's different times where you're in front of, your son in this situation, or you're in the back. And good leaders can determine, where they need to be, whether it's in front or back or up on that stage and kind of looking through that crowd, like you said.
And so the gentleman that did the video, I guess he adopted that leadership style because he was looking at horses. So the stallion of the pack that leads the pack, they drive the pack from the back. So all the rest of the horses in the front, and this horse is in the back pushing it. Now let's look at wolves. Wolves do the same thing. So wolves, they will break into sections as they're moving out, right? So in the very front, they have the strongest and fastest wolves in the front as scouts, right?
Right.
Then the next section is like all the females and, the little bit slower, non-dominant wolves. Behind that is the older wolves, like the ones that are like the leader of the pack and stuff like that. And they got this convoy of wolves, right? So when they're hunting or they're moving out or whatever, the reason they put those strong, fast wolves in the front is so that they can run down the prey. Once they run down the prey and corner the prey, the older wolf that's more efficient at killing, guess what he does? They corner him, and then he does the killing. He's not as fast as he used to be able to run them down, but he let them young wolves go out there and corner them and get them in a spot so the older wolf can come up.
Direction right there.
Yep. But let's talk about this echo chamber. You said you wanted to talk about like how do we avoid echo chambers in leadership. Where did you want to go with that one?
And I think this is a good time to summarize all this stuff up. When this first all started off, and I know you really were passionate about doing this, and I saw different leaders come on, and I love seeing all the different perspectives and listening to different experiences. I for one, I took a lot from it after a while, and then I slowly started to see a trend. And this is not to discredit anybody by any means, but a little problem that I foresaw is this echo chamber that we kind of create amongst ourselves, right? What conversation could we have between you and myself helps the rest of the formation right now? We're only talking to one another. Yeah, we put it up on this this live chat or whatever, but what are we really doing to take this conversation that we're having right now and the affect other people in a positive light? So that you have to be able to connect with these younger soldiers that I talked about earlier, these Gen Zs, not discredit them, not say they've got it easy, they've got it soft and they're not going to do well in the Army. And then you can't be that senior leader as well and say, oh, well, I've got the rank and authority. You have to do it as I do. And you can't be that senior leader either to say, well, look at all these positions I've had. I've clearly made it, and look how established I am. I clearly know what I'm talking about because I don't have to change. I've succeeded. I've arrived, We've established that that's not the way to go. So my concern is this echo chamber that we're creating amongst our, quote, good leaders. And I put that in quotes too because I don't want to just say, oh, you know what, Top, me and you, we got it all figured out. Because we don't. We certainly don't.
We don't.
And I learn every day. So it's kind of a rhetorical question because I don't expect either one of us to have the answer to this, but it's just something that I want to call out to everybody else who may actually watch this. Who knows? But then something that I'm going to try and carry on as I teach all these new lieutenants coming in over the cycles is how do we take these conversations that we have that are good, whether they're command climate or whether they're just hip pocket training or just a conversation that we have outside the first sergeant's office. How do we teach that amongst the other junior leaders that need to hear it? And maybe that's just broadening your coaching and mentoring group and saying, okay, well, I know this guy's going to be good because he runs fast and he does well on all of his tests. He's charismatic. Like those leaders, I'm not worried about. You know what? They're going to be fine. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to find their mentors, whether that's you or whoever. They're going to find them. It's the leaders that are on the fence and they say, okay, look at how much potential this dude has. He's empathetic. He understands. He communicates clearly. He's very competent. Maybe he doesn't have the confidence yet, and he doesn't have the experience of those positions yet. Those are the people that you want to try to pull under your wing and say, hey, dude, this is what me and First Sergeant were talking about. What do you think about it? And kind of present those things to those junior leaders. Whether that be a lieutenant or a new E5, maybe they're not being exposed to these kind of conversations that senior leaders are having amongst themselves in these OPDs or NCOPDs, when in fact they're all LPDs and everybody should go to everything. You know that.
Why are you trying to get me started over here, man? So this is what I would say.
So
I would say this. I watched a leadership talk one time. I think it was a TED talk, and the gentleman, I can't remember his name, but what he said was this. He said, what I'm about to talk about isn't going to be anything new. I find more often than not that people need to be reminded instead of taught. And I think the biggest issue we run into is that you'll have two types of people. All right. You will have I want to say it was Sergeant Major Schroeder who said this. Well, he said there's four types of people, right? He said you got the person that's full of like flair and stuff, like full of character, and
yeah,
they're full of like they got personality. That's what he said. You got a person that's full of personality, right? And don't know anything about their job. All right. Nothing about their job, but they can go in a room and they can just muck it up with anybody. Like have a conversation and they're the greatest person ever. And they don't know anything about their job. They have absolutely zero technical skills. Then you got another person.
Yeah.
Zero personality. Can't connect with a person to save their life, but their brain is all zeros and ones. Just as smart as they come. Then you got the third person. No personality, knows nothing about their job. There's nothing in their head. All right. Then you got the fourth person that's rare. They have plenty of personality and they're tactically sound. Now, when you look at these four types of people, I think it's our job as leaders to determine where people fall within those four categories. All right. Now, when we look into our retention on the NCO side of the house, when we look at our retention regulation, they talk about two types of personnel. They talk about people who are unsuitable and people who are untrainable. So unsuitable means you're just out there doing things that you should absolutely not be doing. This does not reflect what our organization is about, and you got to go. Untrainable is we've tried to train you on multiple occasions and you can't be trained, or we're just not getting through to you. Like we've given you the POI, we've done everything that we possibly could to train you, and you're not trainable. So I think we have to take that and look at those four categories and determine where people fall, because the joker with the personality, we could probably train them to go out and learn things about their job. The person with no personality but has their job down, we can teach them through MRT like how to build those character strengths so that they can be able to go ahead. What's up?
You need a little bit of a nudge, but
yeah, just a little bit of a nudge to get them started so they can see like the world isn't as scary as they think it is. Then the other joker over there who has the personality and the character, like it's talent management. It's truly talent management, being able to identify those talents and cultivate them. Like, I can't say that enough. It's definitely about that. Now, the echo chamber piece, this is what I would say to that. I would say that it's kind of difficult to say like, hey, because even if you look on Facebook, right? You look on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of these social media platforms that we have, it's a big echo chamber. I think what we should focus on is this. You should look at where you get your information from, the sources of where you get your information from, because you got places on Facebook where you can go and listen to DJ music, right?
Yeah.
Then you got places you can go where there's people that's doing gaming stuff. Then you got places you can go for relationship advice. I wouldn't advise going there, but it's there. So what I'm saying is this is like, I think that we should focus more on where we get our information from and control how much of that information we allow into our lives. Because me and you talked about brainwashing before. Like, you know, our ears don't have filters on them. So we're constantly hearing stuff. And, you know, we can control what we see. Like, we can turn the TV off, we can disconnect from Facebook, but, you know, things are constantly going into our ears. There's no filter for our ears. You can't close your ears. You can close your eyes, but you can't close your ears. You can put earplugs in, but that's only going to last for so long. So what I would submit to people is this: brainwash yourself. Go out there and find those things that you want to learn and put that stuff into your head. Like, when you're driving to work, you don't have to listen to whatever music or whatever it is that you want to listen. Put something into your body, like an audiobook or something that you're interested in or something like that. And we're talking an hour a day, 30 minutes to work, 30 minutes home. That's an hour of education that you're getting 5 days a week. Now you're taking control of that programming, because it happens. Because think about it. Think about how many times you've been sitting there and somebody will ask a question about like a person that's a superstar or something like that, and you immediately know the answer and you didn't even study it.
Yeah.
You've never studied for it a day in your life, but this information is in your head. That's because your ears don't have a filter on.
So would you recommend to get out of this echo chamber? I know with just me and you as the example, us talking right now, like somebody needs to be the absorber and somebody needs to be the informer right here, right? And it can't just be one way, and it has to balance out. But then once it gets to one of us, like, we can't just hold on to it, right? Whatever we're talking about right now, I'm gonna have to be like, hey, you know what? I learned something from talking to First Star the other day. Hey, you guys need to apply this, and that slowly gets it out. But it still doesn't fix the problem of leaders getting together and being like, you know what, First Star, you're a good leader. You know what, sir, you're a good leader. You know, we're all good leaders because we do this. Yeah, I get it, dude. I'm totally on board. But just patting each other on the back is not going to solve any problems that are out there with these junior leaders and people that are trying to get better. You've really spoken about it, like saying, hey, consume this audiobook. You know, check where you get your informants from, right? So that's a step. I'm just more concerned that these conversations are being had between people that don't necessarily, I don't want to say need it, but it's just being absorbed, you know? That's my.
I'm gonna throw this out there. The greatest military school experience that I've had, they've all been great. I've learned from all of them, but the one that I took the most from was ALC in 2010. Sergeant Major Griffin was the first sergeant for Ordnance ALC. And what he did was, we did a whole lot of vignettes. Now I'm an audio learner. If me and you talk about something, it's in my head. Like, you can tell me wrong answers, they're gonna stick, because, like I said, I'm an audio learner. And that is why, like, when I was at the company, I did all of those vignettes like that. Like, every time we did an LPD or NCOPD or whatever, it was always a vignette. And I find that people learn more from their peers and talking to each other than they would just someone sitting in front of them lecturing them. And
you're going to learn about this more later in a future conversation, but that's what the Army's going to in the experiential learning model. Just that's something for something later. That's what the Army's moving to with all their academics, I guess, throughout the Army.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And what I took from that was this: is like, you know how you go to a school and you learn all of this stuff, and then you're just so excited you want to get back to your unit, you want to implement it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, like, we'll have organizations that kind of discourage that. You know, they'll be like, "Oh, forget what you learned in school. You know, this is what it is." And what I would encourage leaders to do is this: stick to your guns. I remember when I was a staff sergeant. I ain't gonna say what unit I was in, but I was a staff sergeant. I went to master driver school, and they sent me to master driver school. I went to master driver school, and I come back to the unit. And I come back and I find all this stuff is jacked up. Like 348s are jacked up, licenses are jacked up. So I go to the platoon sergeants and I tell them, I'm like, look, you have a week to give me this information. I'm like, nobody's driving within this week. Like, nobody's driving because all the licenses are jacked up. I'm like, you have a week to give me this information, or I'm clearing all of this stuff out of the Sam's box. I'm telling my age now. I'm clearing all of this stuff out of the Sam's box, and nobody's going to have a license. I'm like, nobody's driving with these licenses, and they're not getting my commander in trouble. I'm like, these licenses are wrong. I'm not putting it on anybody. I'm here now. It's my job to fix it. So about 2-3 days go by. I get called up to the company, and the platoon sergeants, they ambushed me. I'm a staff sergeant, they're sergeant first class, but they didn't know, like, hey, I'm not the guy. I really don't care what your rank is. I care what's in black and white. You know, that's what I'm standing on. So they're telling me, like, you know, what happened to the time where an NCO would go out and read a TM and train their soldiers. And my response to this platoon sergeant was this. So basically what you're telling me, that if I want to be a Black Hawk pilot, the only thing I need to do is go read a TM to PMCS a Black Hawk, right? He's like, oh, you're smart, you know what, blah, 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 whatever. So time goes by, and then I get called into the office with the first sergeant. And the first sergeant tells me, he has the platoon sergeants in there, they think they're going to gang up on me again. I'm like, dude, y'all ain't going to win this one. So they tell me, they say, the first sergeant says, you know, I've been in the Army for like 26 or 27 years. I don't have my 348. So you're telling me that I don't have a license? I was like, no, first sergeant, that's not what I'm telling you. That's what the Army's telling you. These aren't my rules. I'm like, if you don't want me to fix the problem, then you need to find another master driver. So I understand the piece of leaders going to school and coming back to the unit and trying to implement things and the pushback that they're going to get. But your job as a leader is to not let up. Don't let up. You can't just come in and say, like, all of these things are jacked up and don't have a plan to fix it. Your job is to give the facts, the plan to fix it, like the way ahead. You can't just come in here and be like, hey, I'm cutting everybody's license. Now you just, you know, you jacked up your commander's mission. But you come in and say, hey, sir, ma'am, first sergeant, this is wrong. We need to stop driving now. This is what the regulation says. Here's the way ahead to fix it. You know, give them a couple of courses of action so they can pick which one they want to use and go from there. You know, but that was the biggest thing. I'm gonna say one more thing. That was the biggest thing that I took from those vignettes, was like, whatever I learned in school, I needed to go back and use it with my team because it worked so well with me.
Yeah. And I like that you pointed that out. Is what was that first sergeant's first response? Hey, I've been in this long, we've been doing it this way, you don't understand. Bro, I just told you, like, you get to that point, it's time for you to go. I hope I never utter those words. And I hope whoever catches me saying them says the same thing to me, like, hey, sir, it's time for you to go. You just
So I gotta say this, though. I gotta say this. A lot of I've experienced, like, I've been blessed. I've had great officers. I've had great officers. I can honestly say that I have never had a bad leader. I can honestly say that I have never had a bad leader. Like, all of my leaders have been phenomenal. Even the leaders who I ended up going into and we didn't like each other in the beginning. When I left, we were good. Like, I can literally pick up the phone and call any leader I've had in my entire military career. I've never had a bad leader. But what I have experienced is this. You will sometimes get people on the O side who has, you know, a certain rank, and they won't listen to the experience and the wisdom that you're trying to impart on them to keep them from making a mistake. And this was a thought that I had today. So we talk about wisdom and knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And the old saying is this: Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you don't put it on a salad, in a fruit salad. Now,
Right.
here's the part that we got to break down and dissect. The part we got to dissect is this. The difference in between leaders is this: how they determine to arrive at wisdom. Do you arrive at wisdom through, pain, sweat, and tears because you done got beat up and you ain't listening to and learning from other people's mistakes? Or you're listening to the things that people are telling you so that you don't make the same mistakes that they did? Like you can have wisdom, like you can have wisdom without having knowledge. But knowledge without wisdom, that is a recipe for disaster.
Yep. You said it. Hey, you kind of hit on it. This is the last thing for my bullet points that we were going to talk about.
Okay.
It was you had those leaders that just didn't want to listen to your wisdom, right? And this isn't a huge talking point, but it's more of a pet peeve. And
we got two questions in here we'll do after this.
Okay. As someone that's going to be training junior officers now, I'm going to preach to them like, hey, listen to your NCOs. That was always preached to me from every leader coming in, switching over. Hey, listen to your NCOs. They know what they're talking about. And I'm even partnered with the Sergeant First Class, and we train lieutenants together, so they have both perspectives. And they kind of get that. And the good officers with no experience coming in, they're fresh, they're green behind they'll listen to them and be successful, hopefully. That's what we want them to. But then my question is for you, how many senior NCOs have you seen have a successful career and acknowledge that, okay, now is my time to absorb the experience of that senior officer, that field grade or lieutenant colonel in command saying, you know what, he's probably got a good understanding of what's going on. And it's my job to carry out his intent rather than question it all the time or undermine it, right? And I think there's a disconnect sometimes between senior NCOs and like, man, I don't know, those officers up there making decisions, I don't understand how they do it. Don't get it. They're idiots. I can't believe they planned this training for us, and something goes on and they don't have the full picture. So I just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think what it boils down to, like, anybody who is not willing to listen when they walk into a room, that problem is gonna take care of itself, because eventually, it's gonna work itself out. You're not gonna be around for long, because when you get to the point where like you're just the person who knows everything and you're not listening to anything that anybody has to say, you know it all, somebody's gonna get rid of you eventually, because you're not value added at that point. You're not listening to, because we can all learn from each other. Like rank has nothing to do with your ability to be able to learn from someone who has less rank than you. Like, we have freaking privates who have dang on PhDs. Yeah. Privates. So you're literally telling me that if you have a private that has a PhD and you don't use talent management, I wouldn't care what that private's job was. If you don't use talent management to put that soldier in a position that's going to best support the team and make the team better, you've missed out on an opportunity, and you probably shouldn't have the dang on honor of having that soldier as your subordinate, because you don't know how to properly utilize it. So I had a leader tell me at a very young age, he was like, look, we had one of my battle buddies. This dude could fabricate anything. He was a mechanic. He could literally fabricate anything. Like, anytime we went somewhere and something broke and we didn't have whatever we needed to fix it, this guy would figure out a way to fabricate something to make it work. That was a true skill, but he was a horrible mechanic. Horrible mechanic. And what my platoon sergeant Martin, what he told me was this. He was like, Green, look, I didn't realize it. He pointed it out to me. He's like, Green, look at this. He's like, always remember this. He said, find out what a person is good at. Always find out what a person is good at. And then when the time is right, have them do it. That's how you build confidence. And he pointed out my battle buddy. And he's like, why do you think? He's like, he can learn. We're going to teach him. He can learn. We're going to teach him. But the thing about it is like, figure out what they're good at and use that to your advantage to make your team stronger. Right. So We got two questions. We're gonna come back to Sarn Flavor's question. I think you're gonna like this first one.
Okay, go ahead.
So, should airborne soldiers be held to a different standard than non-airborne soldiers?
Should airborne soldiers be held to a different standard than non?
And I think what he's referring to is like an airborne unit versus a non-airborne unit.
If that's for me, I already know where I'm going to take this.
Hey, go for it. You know how we do.
And I know this because you're airborne, and hey, I got it airborne all the way, and I've never met anybody from an airborne unit that I'm like, this dude's trash. He doesn't get it. Like, they want to be crazy and jump out of airplanes, and they're so motivated to do it. No, I'm not saying like, that there's not turds in the airborne unit, but for the most part, I've not ran into them. And everybody that I've worked with in an airborne unit has been a pleasure to work with and very competent. However, just because you have high standards in the airborne unit doesn't mean they can't be applied everywhere. There's no reason that Fort Bragg soldiers should be so much better than Fort Bliss soldiers. I don't believe in that. That shouldn't ever be a case. Because if you got soldiers that are coming from 82nd and you're like, man, I can't wait to get these new squad leaders. Bro, what are you doing? You had the chance to mentor and teach these squad leaders from JBLM or Fort Carson, and you just didn't because of what? They're a leg? Come on, that's wasted potential.
I'm gonna let a man on a little bit of secret. So, I started at Fort Bragg. I was at Fort Bragg from 2004 to 2011. So when I left Fort Bragg, I had, as everybody would say, the Bragg mentality.
Yeah.
And every unit that I have went to, my standards have never changed. I always have. I always encourage my soldiers to exceed the bare minimum. I encourage my soldiers to get 275 and above on their PT test. I encourage my soldiers to exceed standards. And the one thing, this is the reason why I encourage my soldiers to exceed the standard, especially on the PT test. Because one of my leaders told me this a long time ago. He said, look, imagine there's a line on the ground, right? And your toes are at that line. And that's that 180, right, on the PT test. And you just train to meet that 180. What happens the one day when you're sick and you take that PT test? Do you think you're going to pass?
Yeah.
So that was why I've always, the standard's been the same. The same thing how we be out there dragging the record chains, doing the last man up. I've been doing that since 2011 in Korea.
I think it's just a way of fighting the culture, right? And like I just summed it up. I don't think that should be a thing in the Army, even though it is. Everybody in every unit's like, oh, they got that Bragg mentality. Oh, they're an airborne soldier. They're squared away. Why is that a thing? Like, it shouldn't be, right? I mean, obviously it is. But I want people to say, oh, man, this guy's coming from Fort Knox, from HRC. This guy knows how to be a soldier. Nobody says that, but maybe they should. Why aren't they provided? Everybody should be provided the same sort of mentorship and higher standards throughout the Army. So you don't have these people that are like, you know what? I got some turds coming in from 25th. They're not airborne, but they'll do. But come on, nobody should be saying that.
And I think that's on the leaders. Like, you as a leader, I've always believed this. I don't care who you give me, they're gonna be the best. Yeah. And people can call it arrogant, they can call it whatever they want to. I literally do not care who you give me. Give me whoever you want, and we're gonna win. That is my view on leadership. Like, it's not so much about who you have, but it's about how can you get them to work together to accomplish the mission. And that's how I've always viewed it. Like, I'm telling you, I have never cared. Like, I have never cared because I look at it like this. This is Green's world, all right? This is Green's world. In Green's world, I'm going to figure out what you're weak at. I'm going to figure out what you're good at. I'm going to use what you're good at to build your confidence. Then I'm going to work on those things slowly that you're not good at, and I'm going to build those up. And I'm going to build them up and build them up and build them up to the point where we forget what it was that you were bad at. And then one day you're going to just wake up and you're going to be like, hey, what happened? That thing that I used to be weak at, I'm pretty darn good at it now. Yep. And that's just the way that I've looked at it, is like, you have people in the military who are amputees and they still want to serve. So who am I as a leader to take somebody who has all of their limbs, all of their life, and want to serve and be like, you're not good enough because you're not a part of this club?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, let's. Did you have something else? Do you want to move on?
Before we wrap this all up.
Okay. Let me see where we at. Here we go. This is a good one.
I can read it. Okay, so this is just the benefit of my experience as an NCO. Like I said, the Army's changed quite a bit since I first came in. And there's probably a time where I would say, hey, don't worry about it. You know, me and so we'll take care of it and won't have to, have to worry about anything like that. Now that I'm older, more experienced in a different position, I know that is complete BS. And I'll tell any of these lieutenants coming in too, and when they go to their platoon, if you have a squad leader, a team leader, or somebody, hopefully not your platoon sergeant saying, hey, that's NCO business, which is not just like beans and bullets and then something else. Like, no, that's my business. Because ultimately, that young officer's in charge. And I don't mean that to say that as, authority and leading with rank. I'm saying he's accountable. They are accountable for anything that happens. So while it's kind of cute that NCOs will be like, this is NCO business, don't worry about it, sir, I got it.
Man, we just touched some heartstrings, didn't we?
At the end of the day, because I'm held accountable for it, just as I hold you accountable for your actions as a team leader or squad leader. So I'm not a big fan of it, and I always tell these lieutenants coming in, hey, they have NCO business, you get some shady NCOs trying to do something that one of the three: illegal, unethical, immoral. And you should definitely have your hands in those pockets.
Well, I would say this. I would ask you a question. So when you've had leaders, right, that would take care of business, and you didn't have to ask them things, they would bring you information. They would make sure you were informed on what was going on. Was that ever even a conversation of this is NCO business?
No, it's just what a non-commissioned officer does. It's their duties.
It blows my mind because and then look, don't get me wrong. There's a reason that we have officers and we have non-commissioned officers. There are things that I absolutely need to do. Like, for example, and I know I'm probably finna upset some folks, but I don't care. All right. So, look, if as a leader, right, we have leaders in position to lead. Now, if you, as a company commander, stands in front of your company and say, hey, I want X to happen like this, boom, 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 and go all the way through it.
Yeah.
All right. And then X does not happen. How do you hold people accountable at that point? Look at what you just did. Look at what you just did. So now
I gave clear guidance.
No.
It wasn't
I'm
met.
not saying that. What I'm saying is that use your chain of command. Like, tell those leaders, tell those platoon leaders, tell those platoon sergeants. Like you tell your platoon leaders and your platoon sergeants, or just tell your platoon leaders what you want to happen, and they pass that message on to the platoon sergeants, and that stuff disseminates down versus shotgun blasting the entire organization. Because now with this is the only thing I'm saying. You can do it. It's a method, but when it's not done, who all are you writing the counseling statement for?
I think I got disconnected.
No, I still hear you. Can you hear me? You still there? Oh yeah, he got disconnected, but he'll be back. All I'm saying is we have a chain of command for a reason. All right, we have a chain of command for a reason. We have the NCO support channel. and we have the chain of command. And you know what? I'm gonna do a little drawing here that I did for my company when I was over there. Let me use some color so everybody will be able to see it. Hopefully I can find something bright. All right, so he's back. Hold on. Let me get him out of here.
Yeah, I'm having some internet
There you
problems
go.
so far, but I thought we had a good talk. I'm gonna wrap it up and get on out of here.
All right. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. Hey, we got to do this again sometime, sir.
Yeah, I'm gonna be finishing up with some other courses before I head back. So I'm sure I'll get some more good insight after I'm done with all this and talk a little bit more about the experiential learning model that the Army's pushing down.
Yes, please do.
But I got my little girls coming back in from taking a walk with their mom, so.
Hey, thank y'all. We appreciate it. Tell the wife I said we appreciate you. Her loaning you to us for a little bit.
I hope somebody watches this because I love watching or answering questions. So maybe we'll get this picked up and I'll be another guest speaker one more time.
Most definitely, sir. All right. Hey, y'all have a good night.
All right. Thanks, Todd.
All right. Okay, everybody. Hey, thank y'all for joining us here on Let's Talk About It. We just had a great conversation with Captain Gallagher. Me and Captain Gallagher had a lot of great conversations when me and him was in the same company. I really respect what he has to say. He has a very unique way of looking at things. And I just thought it would be very, very beneficial if we brought him onto the channel so that everybody can hear what he has to say. All right. So, once again, everybody, thank you for joining me here. And let's talk about it. And as I say in all of my videos, life is a choice, and we're depending on you to choose well.